Sometimes when we are new to a platform, a style, a concept, or a way of making music, something like the MPC, for instance, we can have a tendency to get stuck in our habits or perhaps maybe not even realize all the tools that are available to us. Some of the things that the MPC does really well, especially for a standalone drum machine, that you may not be aware of, are things like routing, where you can route things to submixes, which can be used as buses, and also things like return tracks, where you have dedicated tracks that can be used as effect sends. Not to mention that the MPC is actually a beast when it comes to things like automation. Let's take a look. Okay, so let's check out some routings. Okay, for now, the only drums that are still playing are these hi-hats right here, and they are all routed to subgroup number 3. Okay, take a listen and see if you can hear a difference between the program and subgroup number 3. One more time. Routing all the hi-hats to the same subgroup allows me to process them without using multiple instances of the same plugins. And check out what happens if we change the routing on the kick and the snares. It's going to change the sound completely, and we'll change it over to where we have the hi-hats routed, and let's see what that sounds like. Okay, so we're in the pad mix screen right now. If we hit track mix, this menu right here tells you all the different types of areas you can be in the MPC universe. And what we are going for is the submix panel. And you have 8 available groups, or I like to think of them as buses, where you route things to these buses and you process them within the realm of that bus. You process that group together, and then it gets sent out to the mains or to other outs you may have going out of the MPC. I have submix number 1 as my kick, basically. Submix number 2 are all the snares except for the snare that you hear in the drum break. Submix 3 are the hi-hats and the drum break. And the reason I grouped those together is I didn't want a lot of low end or a lot of high end in the drum break. And I don't even really like a lot of high end in my hi-hats, not above 10K, maybe 11K, especially when I'm doing hip hop. Moving on from there, submix 4 and submix 5 are both for the melodic samples. 6 and 7 are blank, and number 8 is for the bass. So using the example of something like the bass track, if I was going to use, let's say, a different bass in the chorus than I was going to use in the verse, but I wanted to do some of the same processing on them, I could easily do that by routing them both to the same submix and have the same processing on them so that they kind of fit in the same space. Okay, let's take a closer look at submix number 3. I have everything else muted except for it.
And here's what the group would sound like with all effects bypassed.
So in most cases, when I am working with mixed buses or subgroups, the idea would be to bring out certain things that enhance the sound. In this case, it is almost the exact opposite. I am thinking of this grouping as my backup singers of all the drums. They are there to enhance the main characters, being the kick and the snare. And here's what it sounds like once again with everything bypassed. And here is what they sound like in context when we bring back in the main kick and the snares. Okay, so hopefully with that example, you are able to see a context and a case use for using buses or submixes. Okay, so let's talk about sends and return tracks. And if you need a little bit more help on understanding sends and delays and how to set them up, I suggest you check out my video, Setting Up a Delay Return Effects on MPC 1, right up here. Okay, let's listen to that again. And this time, what we are going to do is we're going to scroll to the left one click, and that's going to bring us to the returns page. And we're going to unmute all three of these. On return 1, I basically have a reverb setup. Return 2 is a delay, which is, I believe, only being used for one sound. And return 3 is also only being used for one sound. And it's a stereo widener, but potentially I could route more sounds to these return groups. And I believe the reverb is actually using 2 or 3 sounds. So let's take a listen. So what you are hearing right now are only the effects on any of the melodic instruments. The instruments themselves are actually muted right now. So taking a look at the returns, on return number 1, we have our large reverb, and I always suggest to people on return tracks, you always want to have your wet dry dial up to 100 on your main effect of that channel. If that's a reverb, have it up to 100. And then I always also suggest that you EQ your effect, whether it's a reverb or it's a delay or it's a stereo widening tool or it's a distortion or saturation. You always want to EQ it. You very rarely, except for when you're doing your final mastering, even then, you don't really want your whole spectrum to be affected by the bus most of the time. You want to cut out the highs and lows usually, and pretty much any effects return, you want to at least cut out the lows in almost every scenario. I actually have this set very narrow right here. Okay, on the delay, pretty much standard stuff. We got the analog delay and we got the EQ, and then I also put in this auto pan, and I don't have its wet dry up to 100%. I still wanted a little bit of the signal to stay down the middle. In other words, I didn't want it to get hard left and hard right. So I got a bit of a mix at 84%. And return 3 is especially interesting. Like I said, I only have one sound. going to it. We got the widening tool, and then we got it EQ'd, and then we have this one right here, the granulator. And I ought to say this is my own preset actually, because I did customize it a good bit, and I really like what it adds. You don't know me, there's no relation to you don't play. I don't got time for your petty thinking, my son, I'm bigger than those. Okay, so let's talk about automation. One simple thing you can do with automation is track mutes. And if you go to the track mute page and you hit overdub, you can mute as the song progresses or as the pattern progresses, and you can record in real time the mutes. And I don't always use timing correcting, but when I'm doing mutes, I usually do have it on. And so this is the intro of this beat, and this is the automation that I have set up for this track. Man, those are really good. I need to get back on a diet. Now, if you were listening, you may have also heard a filter automation going on, and you would have been correct. If we go to the proper track, which is the samples track, and we go here to the grid, if you tap down here where it normally says velocity and you can see how hard you were hitting the pads, you double tap it. Come on. You can add new parameters to modulate or to automate. And I already have set up the track mute, the pad mute for one of the pads, and pad 2 frequency adjustment. So that's basically low pass filter moving down for most of the intro, and then right at the end it kind of slowly comes back up. Let's show that. There it is. So it's actually at 2 different levels. At about halfway it filters out some more and then comes back up. It's that reverse sound. And I will say that fidgeting with this can be a little fiddly. Until you get used to it, get used to using the undo button. Make sure you have the hourglass on when you want to zoom in. And sometimes it's easier, rather than dragging your finger across, to just tap the spot where you want to make an adjustment. If you are holding down and make a movement right or left, it'll assume that everything from that point, that direction, wants to go up with it. So be careful, be ready to use the undo button, and have fun experimenting with what you can do with this. Now, something you can have a lot of fun with automating is something I've done right here. On this pad, I have put in a lane for layer 1 reverse, and there's only one layer on this sound. So that's basically reversing that pad. And as you can see, it's just doing it here on the last measure. So let's listen. Oh yeah, it's kind of this bell type sound. So that's the sound. When it automates it, you might not have caught it. But if we go over here to program edit, it sounds like this when it's reversed. I'm also including in the links below a project template where you can check out all these different things like the routings and the submixes and the things like that. Click the link below and let me know where to send the file, and you can start checking out all the different things I have going on in the sample project. I'm also including with the project template a few drum samples and the bass that you heard in the project. What's not included are the melodic samples because you would have to get license clearance to use it. So I just left it out, and the key of the project is in G minor. So just fill it up with things, find a couple samples that are in the key of G minor, and you should be good to go. And remember, until I talk to you next time, that life is short. Treat your people really well. Have a good one. And the links below for sends. Okay, so oh goodness gracious. Click the link below. In the links below, oh goodness gracious, son of. Sometimes when we are new to a platform, the fuck was I gonna say? I suggest you check out my video setting links below a project template. God damn, just say project template. And I suggest that you check out my video. You are able to see a context and what was it? Context and the fuck was I saying? Context and sometimes when we're so I'm also including in the this is serious things like routing to I'm actually very narrow. I'm very sometimes when we're new to a platform or a way of creating music, we do a bunch of shit and fuck it up. Where you can if you need a little bit more help, and let me know where to